There comes a point in a woman's life when something inside her shifts forever. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive with lightning or grand announcements. It is quieter than a whisper, and yet more powerful than an earthquake. It is the moment she awakens, truly awakens, and realizes that there are lines she will never again allow to be crossed. This awakening does not come from bitterness or anger. It comes from clarity, the kind of clarity that feels ancient, the kind that settles deep in the bones and refuses to be negotiated. Before this moment, she may have spent years trying to explain herself, to be understood, to fit into molds that never felt quite right. But now something inside her refuses. She stops seeking permission to exist. She finally understands that her soul has always been sacred ground, not a public park. You may not notice her transformation at first. She still smiles, still speaks gently, still loves deeply. But there is something different in her eyes, a stillness, a knowing, a quiet power that tells you she no longer belongs to the world that once owned her. Have you ever seen that look? That subtle but unmistakable peace that lives behind the gaze of a woman who has decided to stop performing. Her awakening is not a single moment. It is a slow recalibration, a reordering of everything inside. She begins to see where her energy ends and where the world begins. For the first time, she can tell the difference between what is truly hers and what she has been carrying for others. She starts to listen to the quiet music of her own soul, and suddenly, the noise of expectations feels unbearable. It is not that she stops caring. It is that she starts caring for herself too. For years she may have tried to set boundaries, explaining, defending, apologizing, as if protecting her own peace was an offense that required justification. But now she does not merely set boundaries. She becomes the boundary. There is no need for confrontation, no need for loud declarations. Her energy speaks for her. Her silence has become her power. When she looks in the mirror now, she no longer sees the woman everyone else built, the dutiful daughter, the perfect partner, the accommodating friend. She sees herself raw and unmasked. That reflection feels unfamiliar at first. Then it feels like home, and from that moment she cannot go back. Once you see your own soul clearly, you can never again pretend you are someone else. There was a time when she wore a mask just to be accepted. A mask shaped by what others needed her to be. Beautiful but not intimidating. Kind but never too assertive. Helpful but never demanding. That mask fit so tightly that she almost forgot she had a face beneath it. Until one day the exhaustion became unbearable. Her spirit whispered, "No more." And so she let it crack. That breaking was not her failure. It was her freedom. Because in the ruins of who she was supposed to be, she finally began to uncover who she really is. But truth, as liberating as it is, does not always earn applause. When a woman begins to live authentically, the people who benefited from her compliance often call it rebellion. They call her distant, selfish, cold. They do not understand that she is not withdrawing from love. She is withdrawing from distortion. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable the world becomes when a woman stops apologizing? She is no longer the supporting character in anyone's story. She is the author now. And she writes differently. Sometimes the old patterns try to pull her back. The old voices whisper, "Be nice, be accommodating, be what they expect." But where there was once an automatic yes, there is now a sacred pause, a moment of stillness where she listens for truth. Only then does she respond. She does not say no out of anger. She says no out of alignment, and that perhaps is her greatest power. The world may still test her boundaries, often disguised as love. Emotional demands are wrapped in guilt, disguised as care. She used to believe that empathy meant carrying other people's pain, absorbing their chaos, holding what was never hers. But now she understands that is not empathy. That is entanglement. She has learned to sit beside someone's pain without drowning in it. She can love deeply without dissolving. She can care without collapsing. To those who were used to her endless availability, her newfound peace feels like rejection. They may call her detached. But it is not detachment. It is discernment. For the first time she knows that true love does not demand self-erasure. True connection does not require you to disappear. And when the guilt comes, because it always tries to, she breathes and reminds herself, saying no to someone else is often saying yes to her soul. She no longer explains her choices. She no longer defends her intuition like a witness on trial. There was a time when every decision required an essay of justification. I hope this makes sense. I just wanted to explain. I did this because... But she is done living like her life is a courtroom. Her choices no longer need approval stamps. They simply need to feel right in her bones. When questioned, she smiles and says softly, "This is my decision." Period. No footnotes, no justification, no apology, and it confuses those who thrive on her defensiveness. Because power, real power, is quiet. Anyone who truly respects her will never demand she defend her soul. Only those who seek control will insist she prove herself. Again and again. She has stopped playing that game. There is another form of disrespect she now recognizes clearly, the kind that hides behind honesty. Those little jabs disguised as jokes. The subtle comments that bruise but come with a smile. The quiet contempt that says, "I was just being real." She no longer laughs to keep the peace. She no longer tolerates conversations that diminish her light. She no longer sits at tables where her dignity must be the sacrifice for belonging. She does not make a scene when disrespected. She simply leaves. Her absence becomes her boundary. Her silence, her declaration, and though some call it coldness, she knows it is self-respect in its purest form. Then there are the projections. Those heavy emotions that others cannot carry within themselves, so they hand them to her. Their anger becomes her guilt. Their shame becomes her burden. Their denial becomes her confusion. She has stopped accepting deliveries that are not hers. She recognizes now that some people only feel balanced when someone else absorbs their darkness. She used to be that someone, not anymore. When they hand her their pain, she no longer takes it as her own. She says, gently but firmly, "This does not belong to me." And though it shocks them, she understands this is not cruelty. This is clarity. She would rather stand in temporary loneliness than permanent distortion. She would rather be misunderstood than misaligned. And yes, it can feel lonely at times. The quiet after releasing people who only loved her fragments. But this loneliness is clean. It is peaceful. It is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. For the first time in her life, she knows what is hers and what is not. There is one lesson she carries with sacred reverence. She will never again sacrifice herself to keep a connection alive. If a relationship demands that she amputate parts of her soul to stay, then she chooses to walk away whole. Love that costs your essence is not love. It is a transaction. Loyalty that demands your silence is not devotion. It is imprisonment. She has learned to release what diminishes her even when it hurts. She walks away not because she stopped loving, but because she started honoring herself. And yes, people talk. They call her selfish. They say she changed, and they are right. She did. But what they call selfish, she calls sacred. What they call distance, she calls dignity. The final boundary she guards most fiercely is this: she will never again betray her own truth to keep the peace. She knows now that pretending is a slow form of death. How many women have smiled while their souls were screaming? How many have agreed while their spirits were collapsing? She has done it enough times to know. False peace is the enemy of freedom. So she chooses conscious conflict over silent suffering. She would rather face tension than lose herself. And when she honors that truth, something miraculous happens. Her entire world begins to rearrange. The people who depended on her compliance fade away. The spaces that demanded her silence dissolve. The energies that thrived on her confusion disappear. In their place comes peace, not the peace that requires pretending, but the peace that feels like home. It is then that she realizes solitude is not punishment. It is sanctuary. She sits in her quiet space and feels whole for the first time. She does not crave noise. She does not chase validation. She simply breathes, knowing she is safe within herself. And slowly, as if the universe was waiting for her to arrive, new souls begin to appear. People who do not need to control her, who do not mistake her strength for arrogance, who do not shrink from her truth. These are not many, but they are real. Quality replaces quantity. Depth replaces drama. For the first time, she is surrounded not by those who consume her light, but by those who honor it. Awakening has its cost. It takes your illusions. It takes your old comfort. It takes the version of you everyone else preferred. But it gives you yourself. It gives you back your voice, your essence, your freedom. And once you have that, you realize nothing you lost was ever truly yours. So when you see a woman who moves with quiet confidence, who does not argue, who does not chase, who simply is, understand she has not become cold. She has become clear. This calmness you sense in her is not apathy. It is mastery. She has arrived home within herself.